Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Great topic today, always one of my favorites, so let's do it. Campers and outdoorsmen of Reddit. What's the scariest thing that's ever happened to you while in the wilderness? Please remember to like, share your own. Bear cub in my tent. There's not much of a story here. I woke up. There was a bear cub snuffling around my stuff. Food was in a tree hide. I didn't move. Mama bear pokes her head in, yells at her kid, and walks off. Baby bear flops his or her way out of the tent. I didn't move from that spot for like 2 hours. After thinking I heard a bear nearby for the 1000th time, I regrew my balls, checked my gun, got my shoes on, packed my shit, and got the F out of there. 2 things from my recent trip to Glacier. I was doing night photography at St. Mary's alone, and to help myself feel more comfortable, I was singing some music. For a minute, I stopped to make some adjustments to my camera when I heard a voice in the wind saying, "Don't stop singing," which freaked me out. I immediately turned my headlamp on and did a quick 360 scan around me, but again, I was completely alone. I quickly packed up my gear after that and headed back to camp. Hiking alone through Dawson Pass, I went off the trail to take some pics. Once, when I turned back around, there was this big furry mass coming my way on the trail. I quickly was able to determine this was a grizzly bear, which on all fours would be about halfway up to my chest, so I thought it would be best for me to stay where I was. The bear continued to follow the trail until it got to about 100 feet of me, where it stopped. This is where I started getting scared, as the bear clearly now had some interest in me. I was also kinda cornered where I was, on a rock outcropping overlooking the valley with only a rock scramble behind me. I stayed calm, spoke to the bear, and had my bear spray at the ready in case it decided to come any closer. Thankfully, the bear seemed only curious but stayed with me for about 20 minutes before it left. After that, I waited another 20 minutes to make sure the bear truly left before heading back on the trail. It was a terrifying but memorable experience to see a grizzly so close, but definitely would not want to do it again. Decided to take a path down a bluff rather than hiking the long way down, following the ridgeline over and down, or making a big loop essentially to get down. We, 2 of us, scoped it out beforehand, and there was a very easy and straightforward looking route that went right down the front face. We were in New Mexico, so think big reddish rocks and scrub brush. We thought about it for a while before going for it, which really should have clued us in. I think our subconscious knew it was a bad idea. So it's probably a 100-foot or so bluff, not too big really, small pond at the bottom. Access road lazily looping around the other side of said pond, what we were trying to get to, and then a beautiful collection of pines on a small grassy hill across from that. Pleasant little valley and hill scene, really a great view from up there, forever ingrained into my memory and no complaints. Anyway, we start our route scrambling down, and it's mainly just like navigating through a downhill boulder field. There were a few places that would be difficult to go the other direction on. Then we get about a quarter of the way down, and an obstacle we couldn't see from up top confronts us. A chute between 2 rock faces with about a 7-foot drop and a small landing square at the bottom. Then the route turns abruptly, so it's basically a small ledge that you have to jump down to and then turn 90 degrees and continue on the route we saw from above. We just couldn't see this bit, as it was hidden by rocks when viewed from above, but the ledge was a ledge. It was a full 75-foot or so drop right off the front of it, the direction you were forced to jump between the 2 faces. We paused for a minute, but we had already gone over some sections that we knew would be really painful to get back over, especially since we'd have to hand gear up and such. And after pausing and looking again, we decided it was a total straight shot down after just this one jump. So we decided I would go first. I was taller, so easier to hand gear down too. I took off my pack and stood there looking down at my landing pad. Easy, I remember thinking. I took the jump and somehow got tripped up. I think my toe caught the lip of a rock. I really don't know what happened, but I do know that I pitched forward and barely landed my feet on the landing pad at all. I was falling forward off of a 75-foot cliff. Somehow, I managed to throw both of my arms out to the side, and I caught myself staring straight down at the little pond, access road, and pine trees. It really was a picturesque view. But I was more focused on the big rocks and flat, uninviting gravel patch in front of the pond at that point. I was leaned out so far that I could leverage myself back up, so I was basically just leaning way out off this 75-foot cliff, staring down at certain death in the form of some rocks and a tan gravel patch, both arms all the way extended and shaking from strain and just staring down at death. My arms were probably about to give, and it had only really been seconds at that point, if even a second. Time lost meaning, and then the person I was hiking with grabbed the collar of my shirt and pulled me back enough that I could engage my arms again and push back on the rock faces, getting back to standing upright on the ledge. Thank you, Connor. The real effed up part is that then Connor had to jump down after watching how my jump went. I felt bad about it. Luckily, no issues. About 20 feet later, we found another obstacle we couldn't see from above and had to slide down a rock face that was more than a little sketchy. I think clothes got ripped if I remember right, but after that it was easy going. Moral of the story, don't hike straight down bluffs. Even if you think you see an easy route, it's definitely easier and safer to just hike the gradual decline around the edge of it. Don't end up dead laying in a patch of gravel at the bottom of a cliff. Do the smart thing. Even if you think you can see the whole route, you likely can't, and that path down could kill you. Please be safe. Far be it from me to armchair hike your hike, but what I would have done, probably, if I didn't do what you did, I would have looked at it from the bottom and then said, next time let's do that route. That's just me. Glad you lived, but be careful. Tires slashed at a trailhead parking spot. That doesn't sound scary, but hang on. I found out after returning to the parking spot, it was a winter hike high in the mountains and pretty snowy. The sun was out, and it wasn't that cold, but it would rapidly drop below freezing at sundown in about an hour. The trailhead parking was about a 40-minute drive away from any cell service. There were a half a dozen other cars when we arrived, but only one other car when we got back to find the tires slashed. It's wild how fast it can go from fun family outing to how do I keep my 6-year-old from freezing if we're stuck overnight in the winter at 10,000 feet elevation. Luckily, we were able to flag someone down. They had no room in their vehicle but promised to call the tow service and send them out away soon as they got within cell range. That was a very long, uncomfortable wait. 90 minutes later, and after dusk, a tow truck rolled into the lot. I'm very grateful for the folks who stopped and the tow truck driver who took it seriously enough to drive 40 minutes to see if we were still there. An hour later, we were in the nearest small town where I could call my brother in the city to come fetch us, and I got my kids home and in bed by around 1 a.m. A friend and I got caught in a gnarly, sudden summer thunderstorm. Rain was forecasted, but not a goddamn monsoon. I woke up to the wind ripping the rain cover off the tent and immediately getting soaked by freezing water. We took on heavy water almost immediately and had to pack what we could and ran to the truck. We ended up ripping the site down, shoving it under the tunnel cover and getting out of there as soon as it let up. The craziest part? 1 year later, exact same campground, we got hit by another storm, the exact same scenario. Forecast showed rain, but a cold front and warm front hit right over this small town. This time was so much worse though. A tornado touched down about 150 yards away. I thought we were legitimately going to die that night. The tent stakes got pulled out of the ground and we got tossed around. Thank God we got flung into the wooden fence. I mean, it sucked, but gave us enough time to get oriented and out of the tent. That feeling of flying through the air in a tent made me think of the Wizard of Oz. I couldn't help but laugh in that moment actually. I went booking it to the campground showers, but my dumbass stopped, and I went and checked the tents and trailers. We rounded up a dozen or so people and got everyone huddled into their shower structure. That was probably one of the most intense nights of my life, as the storm lasted for about an hour or two after that, and the rain kept up longer. That effing storm killed 2 people in a house about a stone's throw from our campsite. There were trees down everywhere, and all that remained at our site was the metal fire ring that was half buried. 2 trailers got crushed, and a family lost their vehicle to a tree. I have no idea how my car was unscathed. Forest Service and local PD and fire department had to clear the roads and trees before anyone could skip town. I'm not even mad that I lost all my camping gear that night. I'm never camping a day in my goddamn life again. When my friend and I were kids, we were hiking through the woods, and someone who we couldn't see told us to leave because they were hunting. We said, "You're not supposed to be hunting back here." And suddenly 2 guys in camo appeared from behind trees, aimed their guns at us and said, "Neither are you." I've never run that fast in my life. I mean, if you were kids and they were doing that, it's kind of a dick move. But, I mean, if they didn't have guns and it was slightly less menacing, it could almost be funny. But that's pretty terrifying, so. Over the years, there have been wacky experiences with bears, moose, deer, and the always fun, "Is that a porcupine in the tent with me, or has my partner learned how to whistle?" He hadn't, and it was a porcupine. But one memory that is forever burned into my memory is a thunderstorm at Owl Lake in the Canadian Rockies. It happened in the middle of the night, and the lightning strikes were so frequent and massive that the whole valley was lit up like the middle of the day, and you could feel the electricity through our rubber boots, and our hair was straight out. The thunder was deafening. Even more terrifying, we were trapped in the valley until the storm passed because it was too dangerous to attempt to leave and do the 18-kilometer hike out. So, we cowered in our tents until the storm passed. I've been uncomfortably close to black bears and wild pigs and some potentially unsafe humans. You get used to the rustling, howling, and screaming nighttime sounds mostly, but the most scared I've been is when I twisted my ankle while solo backpacking at least 10 miles from civilization. It took me a minute to know it was just a sprain. In that minute, I was imagining ditching most of my stuff and hobbling down the mountain on a broken ankle. I was pretty sure I'd make it, but it didn't sound fun. Thankfully, it was just a sprain, and I could walk with a limp. I had a couple days left, and was pleased that I made it without further incident, despite the swollen, mildly discolored ankle. My ankle healed just fine, too. When my friend and I were about 12, we were walking across fields and through woods one night and came across a huge house in the middle of nowhere. We heard screaming over and over. We were so scared that we ran away. 20 years later, living in the country myself, I heard the same screaming. It instantly took me back and I was shaking. I looked out of the window and under the soft streetlights, I saw it. A damn fox. A damn vixen in heat, screaming for a mate. Sometimes those vixens just have to be heard. That's all good. Also, off topic, but first snowfall here in New York State, and it's beautiful. So, hope you're enjoying this early winter or summer if you're in another part of the world. Took my girlfriend out for fishing and spending the night in a tent. Had only been together for like 4 weeks, and we were young, around 20, so I actually cared about not being that awkward F that I am. In the middle of the lake we were fishing in, I fart and shit my pants. No idea why, but my body decided that at that moment, my shit came in liquid form. Oh my God, effing what the girl I love is here with me. After like a minute of just sitting there looking at the knife, thinking it would be better to just end myself, I decided to joke it away. Said something like, "Oh my effing God, I shit myself," and started laughing. She lolled as well. She's my wife now. Figured that someone who laughs when I shit myself is a keeper. Scary as is spooky and creepy? On a scary as in genuine fear for my safety and well-being, I'll give you one story each from the same trip. A few years ago, I loaded a bunch of camping gear onto my bicycle and spent the better part of the next 7 months riding 5,300 miles, 8,500 kilometers around the western US. I did this trip solo. At night, I most often prefer to wild camp, simply finding somewhere to disappear into the woods, somewhere people were unlikely to find me, and even less likely to care that I was there. The forest makes for far from a quiet night's sleep, but After the first couple weeks, I'd grown used to and even found comfort in the sounds of the woods. The constant droning of thousands of crickets and toads play a comfort in the sounds of the woods. The constant droning of thousands of crickets and toads. Let's read that again. Actually, this last one's a repeat from a while back, so we'll just end it on the previous story, brother. Talk to you soon.